Um, so hi, it's Adabara, partner technical leader at Databricks. Welcome to another session of the Champion Spotlight series. Today, we're delighted to have Sydney with us from Colibri. Hello, Sydney.
Hi, Deborah. Thanks for
Hello.
having me today.
Amazing. So we're excited and thanks for doing this session with us, right? So I'll just get things started. Just so for people who are watching and don't know who you are, Sydney, just tell us, who you are and what you do at Colibri, and we'll take it from there.
I'm Sydney. I am a senior data engineer at Colibri. I've been there for around 2 years now and been in the data engineering space for four. Um, Colibri Digital is a data and AI consultancy. So we work on projects that are to do with moving clients' data to across different cloud systems, helping them with architectural reviews, helping them understand how to use their AI. And I work specifically on the data engineering side, so working on projects a lot around unifying their data platforms and understanding how they can move across cloud platforms or moving from on-prem onto cloud platforms such as Databricks. And we often use Databricks because we are spanning across data and AI.
Amazing, amazing. And at Colibri Digital, then, do you guys focus on a specific industry or vertical, or do you work across different industries?
So we work a lot across different industries. I myself have worked on a commodities client, financial services client, and also in the public sector. I know that other people have worked in the energy sector and in the healthcare as well. I think what we focus most on is how can we help our clients really utilize their data.
Yeah.
That's usually the key part for us.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. And you're also something called the Databricks Partner Champion. So for people watching, what does being a champion mean? I mean, uh, does it mean that you're the expert on Databricks, or does it mean that you've worked on more customer use cases, etc., right? I mean, what does it mean as a concept? And for people thinking about whether they should become a champion, right? How should they be thinking about that?
Yeah, so I think I guess starting with like whether or not someone should become a Databricks champion. I think from how that kind of builds up, right? Why is it important to be a Databricks champion? Perhaps it kind of leads on to the kind of partnership program. It's the fact that we are a partnership program kind of shows that we have the Databricks expertise and it creates that level of trust between the client, Databricks, and us, Colibri.
Yeah,
It shows a level of mastery because to become a Databricks champion, you have to go through kind of a range of kind of courses, have done a bunch of projects, kind of do a panel interview, really show that you have that expertise and knowledge for Databricks. And it's really helpful for your clients because it means that they know that you know your stuff. So when you go in, it also means you can kind of do kind of a discovery and look at what's going on and be quite quick in terms of being able to advise them and kind of on a personal level of whether or not you should kind of go through that process. I found it really helpful because, I took a course like the Databricks Solution Architecture course where it was instructor led. We had a great course instructor, and also, which was really beneficial, is that there's a bunch of other people across the entire globe going through the program,
yeah,
and they all are have different kind of clients, have different kind of projects, and you are learning about also what they're doing and what kind of solutions they've come up with. So there's also this level of knowledge sharing that's going on. So as an individual, you're also learning a lot from lots of different experts. So
yeah,
kind of once you've gone through that program, you have learned a lot, which means also you can apply that knowledge to your own work and also
yeah,
to your clients and kind of how can you come up with better solutions for your clients and also that collaboration with Databricks because once you are a champion, you kind of get access to some meetings and some meetups. And I think that's where also you end up learning quite a lot in terms of what's coming down the pipeline. And also you get to bring your kind of pain points sometimes of what some trends you see or what's something that a lot of our customers want. And what's great about Databricks is that I've often found, at a bar when we've had our monthly catch ups, and there's a lot of people who come to those and there's a common trend. And that's information that Databricks then takes back right internally. And they think, okay, we've seen this trend. How can we actually do something about this and bring this back to our clients so
Yeah.
that, we're bringing a solution for our clients for what they want. And I think that kind of partnership between us, our clients, and Databricks is something that's really invaluable because it's great that Databricks listens. It's great that we can be there for our clients as trusted experts. And that's kind of that whole kind of rounded solution. And obviously, like personally, that I can kind of learn and be part of that. So that constant evolution is and constant learning is something I also just kind of thrive on. So I enjoy that as well.
Amazing. I mean, I can tell you that the Champions program is, yeah, it's a globally recognized program, and people who are champions, that means something to our customers or to your customers. I mean, I don't know. You've been a champion now for what, at least a year or more, right?
Yeah, just over a year.
Yeah. I don't know if anything changed, like between how you work with customers or what your customers expect of you once you became a champion? Was they like looking for more? I don't know.
Um, I think probably for me, one of the main things is the way that I am able to talk and communicate with clients. I think that there is that level also of kind of, I think, confidence that comes out of it because, I've presented to Databricks experts. They've understood what I'm saying. I'm in a community where I'm constantly learning and able to also bring kind of my ideas and knowledge as well. So when I'm able to communicate that with the clients and also kind of bring new ideas to them with
Yeah,
that confidence, then that also kind of helps the clients kind of understand and trust you. And I
yeah,
think there is that level of expectation that also comes from the clients. If you're a Databricks champion, they do expect you to know certain things. They expect you to keep up with what's going on. And I think that's why that community, like you said, it's a global community,
yeah.
is also really helpful because it means that that access is important because as a community, like you said, for Databricks, it's really important for us as Colibri, it's important. And for our clients, it is because we all want to stay up to date on the most recent thing so we can deliver that for our clients as well.
Amazing, amazing. Right. So you've come a long way. I mean, you've not always been in data, right? You didn't start your career in data. You
No.
did switch at some point. Can you just
Yeah, so I actually done a few different careers before I ended up in data engineering. I
you
started out briefly working in finance. I was a preschool teacher, which will probably always be the hardest job I ever had. I really
yeah.
appreciate everyone who continues to do that. And then I was working in research for early childhood education, and then that was in New York for a while, and then I moved back to London, and that's when I was kind of trying to find what do I want to do next or kind of where's going to be my niche. And that's kind of where data engineering came along because when I was doing research and education, a lot of what I was finding difficult about that is data. Like it was more of a data science role. And in data science, you need to use good data. And a
Yeah.
lot of my role was cleaning data. And that's a lot of what kind of data engineering is good data architecture. How do you kind of make sure you have good data so you can do all of the rest, right?
Yeah.
Right now with AI, everyone wants to do all of these things, which is really great. But if you don't have a good basis of good data architecture that you can use for all those projects, it's not really going to go anywhere. And so that's kind of how I was like, okay, I kind of want to go into data engineering, but how do I do that? Because I don't really have any of those technical skills, right? I never used SQL, I didn't use Python, I didn't know really what GitHub was. And so I found a program through talking with friends called Code First Girls, and I managed to get a place on their degree program, which was 3 months. It was sponsored by Red Kite, my previous consultancy at the time, and there they taught me the basics, like I just said, SQL, Python, GitHub, and then I started working at Red Kite And Red Kite was really great because they had 3, 4 months at the beginning of when I first started working, where they also had a bit of an academy. And there they basically taught us the fundamentals of Databricks, which was because a lot of their clients use Databricks, but also because what they kind of showed us was Databricks had a lot of learning materials out there, which meant that for them, it was quite a good platform to teach us as well.
Yeah,
There's a lot of like learning material in terms of videos out there, documentation. The certification pathway also kind of gives a very clear kind of pathway to learn more. And so that's kind of where my Databricks journey kind of started and my whole engineering journey started.
amazing, amazing. Because actually, there are a lot of people out there who might not be in the industry, but are thinking, oh, AI and data, that's the future. How do I, get involved? Or I don't have the skills. But basically, what you're saying is that someone can come in without a technical background and pick up
Yeah.
the skills.
I think that there's so many like source materials out there, and so I really think probably my advice for people who are trying to get into it is look at kind of what's out there. Even Databricks, right, has the Databricks free edition where you can go and actually play with Databricks and do kind of hands-on learning.
Yeah.
And they have their learning library. If you want to like look at Databricks specifically, there's lots of courses out there where you can learn the basics of coding. And I
Mhm.
think also actually like learning it versus just using AI, like understand the fundamentals. And also just talk to people. I think that's always helpful. I've been to some Databricks events before that are a bit more kind of open or Dev Connects or industry events where there are people who come up and talk to me because, I know a lot about Databricks and they want to know more because their company is thinking about using it or they themselves are thinking about using it within their company. And they're just curious and they think that Databricks can do all these cool things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, talk to me. I've met up with people afterwards who want to ask about it. I think, don't be afraid to reach out to people because, if you don't ask, you'll never know. You miss 100%. I think it's like the base basketball thing, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Um,
Amazing. Okay, cool. Now, obviously, if you look at the data platform ecosystem, right? There are other platforms, I should say, that can do data, I guess. But you've chosen to invest, your time with Databricks and get the champion status, etc., etc. Um, so, I mean, choosing Databricks, was it something where, that's what Red Kite put you on the path towards? Or again, I'm just trying to understand, out of all of the different options or the different data engineering tools in the market, why was Databricks? Was it something that someone said, to Databricks and you found that it was amazing, or did you specifically
yeah.
um
I think so. When I started at Red Kite, they use Databricks.
yeah,
I think it's very much like a best-in-class tool, right? It's a great tool to use, and I got to use it there for the, you know, year and a half-ish that I was there.
yeah,
And then I was then looking for a new consultancy, right? And then that's kind of where I got to make the choice of, am I going to go somewhere that's really invested in Databricks, or do I want to go somewhere else that I can learn a new tool? And at that
yeah,
point, when I was thinking about it, I was, you know, I really like Databricks, right? There are lots of other options out there, but there's that aspect of, you're constantly updating things on Databricks. They're listening to what the clients want. They just have this whole unified platform. And so that's kind of also what drew me to Colibri Digital because they weren't just a data engineering consultancy, it was data engineering and AI. So it kind of also I think married itself a lot to Databricks as a platform, right? Because Databricks has data engineering, ML, and AI. So I think for me, it was like now I'll also have that chance to start using or learning a bit more about the AI side. I think, it's definitely not my like bread and butter. It's still the data engineering side, but it's something that I got to learn more about. And we have people at Colibri who are experts in that. and being able to learn from them is really cool and learn more about that, especially as we have, more tools coming out every day.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of tools, we recently had a data and AI summit in last week. I don't know um, if you've seen some of the announcements that came out of that, but there were like a few new things. I mean,
Yeah.
is there anything that
I,
for you jumped out? Or?
yeah, I saw, I hope I got the name right, but I think it was Genie Zero Ops.
Yeah,
That looked, I think it's still very early on. I'm pretty sure it's still in beta, but please correct me if I'm wrong. But that I think looked really interesting because it kind of was very much the thought process that I've always had of, if there is a pipeline
no,
failure overnight, having an, you know, DevOps tool or a zero ops, Genie zero ops tool that basically looks at that pipeline that's failed overnight, suggests solutions, creates a pull request that you can just review in the morning. I
yeah,
mean, that sounds pretty nice versus in the morning spending, 2, 3 hours combing through what's went wrong and then, you know, potentially not even 2, 3 hours, spending a whole day on it, but having basically a tool that does that for you, I think is a really cool thing to see. I'm curious to look more into it. I think that's probably the one that kind of jumped out at me the most. I haven't had as much chance to look at everything, but I think probably because I've worked on projects where pipeline failures came up, right? So it was one of those things where I'm like, that seemed like an immediate time-saving thing from a data engineering perspective that could be quite cool.
well, I'm glad that you find it useful. So yeah, no, that's good, good feedback. Um, Bringing it back to the customers, right? I mean, we don't have to talk about any specific names. It's just more from a trends perspective. When customers come to you about a problem that requires a solution, in terms of a Databricks implementation, are there like just broadly, are there any trends in terms of the kind of problems or the kind of things, business problems that the customer is trying to solve, where you then position a Databricks, implementation or solution as the answer? Are there like trends of, what issues are they facing?
Yeah, I think that probably the main trend we see is a
Yeah.
similar trend that has been seen in terms of, you know, wanting to have a unified data platform, wanting to have a single source of truth. I
Mhm.
think, it lends itself to a similar thing on the AI side. We see people coming to us and be like, we want to implement AI, but we don't know what to do or how to do it. And
Yeah.
it lends itself looking back to their data infrastructure. And it's like, okay, we need a single source of truth first. So it's,
Mhm.
you know, you need a unified data platform. I think it's actually pointed out at the Data and AI Summit as well, where probably the biggest thing that needs to happen for a lot of companies is to build that unified data platform. Because in the industry, there's still a lot of kind of companies where the architecture from a data engineering perspective is still a bit fractured, where you might have lots of different ingestion tools, or you might have 2 or 3 places where you're storing different data. And so, you know, wanting to have that all in one place is
Yeah.
what a lot of clients want. So sometimes what we'll do is, if a client's coming to us at the very beginning, is have a bit of discovery work for the first, 4-ish weeks, 4, 6 weeks, where we'll talk to them. What are your pain points? What are you looking for? So talking to the different stakeholders, whether it's people in kind of product or finance or, what's their real pain point.
Yeah.
And a lot of it in terms of like cost or efficiency does lead back to if you have a unified data platform, it would end up, you know, solving for a lot of the problems, right? They'd have systems that don't speak to each other.
Mhm.
And that is then where Databricks comes in so much of the time because you have the ability to put everything in one place, right? They want simplicity as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
If we look at examples of clients where, you know, they want to ingest things easily, run a simple pipeline where also internally, someone can take it over. That's where, um, I want to say Lakeflow Declarative Pipeline, Spark Lakeflow Declarative Pipelines, what we call it
Yeah,
now,
I'm
right?
going to them all the time. So
Yeah. You know, that
yeah,
is like a solution that we show clients because we're like, here's something where they can understand it. A lot of it is declarative, right? It's in the name. So, it's not as complex as, you know, some other things where you used to have all the tasks and jobs, etc. A lot of it is kind of the diagrams and connections are done for you for the orchestration.
yeah,
There's like Flow Connect, so like there's a lot of ingestion connections that you can kind of set up. So for clients, they're like, this is great because you can see everything, right? And in terms of the data on the other end, if there are people who want to just analyze the data or see the data, right? You now have the tools in order to do that, right? You can have Genie, you ask it questions, it will give, the finance team questions, and then you have, Unity catalog. So if you're on the finance team, you can only access the data you're meant to access. So really, from a security and governance standpoint, like it's very like fine-grained
yeah,
control, right? And then that kind of leads all into then once you have that set up, how can they use that in terms of like if they want to implement AI, how can they do that? And it's all in the same platform, the same security and governance, everything's in Unity catalog. So I think for clients, that's such a benefit and why it basically ends up being a lot of the solution. So kind of once we've done that discovery and shown it, we often then can move on to that implementation, which will take, depending on the client, 3 months for like quicker projects, sometimes a bit longer, because often a lot of it is also we want to teach the clients how they can manage it themselves, right? So if it's a bit of a larger project, it might take, 6 months, a year, depending on it. But at the end of the day, we also want the clients to handle everything by themselves by
yeah.
the time that we leave. And I think Databricks is also great for that because, like I've said before, there's so much learning material out there. So teaching it to the clients is also something that um, is something that we like to do and can be done because of all the information that's out there about Databricks.
Amazing. And I think, in terms of unifying the customer's data, at the summit, we announced the new architecture, LTAP, the Lake Transaction and Analytics Processing, that brings the lake house plus operational workloads into one place. So now, you don't have to do ETL between your operational databases and the lake. Everything is now in one place with our lake base. So that should hopefully be interesting for your customers as that becomes more established. So we're getting close to the end of the session, but I have a couple of questions just to ask really quickly. You might have answered it already. I don't know if the answer is Genie Zero Ops or not, but I was going to ask if there's one feature on Databricks that you're most excited about. What feature would that be? And I know we've obviously just announced some newer features at the conference,
Yeah.
but
Well, my answer would be Genie Zero Ops. I think it would be interesting to see how it works. I think that because it's so new, yeah, I'm also curious to see how it will work and um, yeah, see what the capabilities are. Um, yeah.
okay, sounds good. Um, I mean, do you have a point of view on, I mean, if I was to say, what do you think, the most underrated feature of Databricks is? What you would say, one that you see that has a lot of capability, but maybe not as many people might be using it or might know about it from your point of view.
I don't necessarily know if it's underused, but I sometimes think that, liquid clustering is so powerful and it does so many things.
Yeah.
And that sometimes it kind of sits in the background and it
Mhm.
does a lot. So people kind of maybe don't give it its props because it is so
Yeah. But it
powerful.
happens automatically now. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I think that, yeah, it is one of those things that it's integrated now, I know, but it is one of those features that kind of has been around a bit. And now that it is just there in the background, that I don't know, at the time or as it was coming in, it does so much. And now you kind of, I guess it happens with a lot of these features. They do so much and then they kind of just,
yeah. Yeah.
get a bit forgotten about. But
Amazing.
because they're there, right?
Okay. And then finally, and you might have alluded to this earlier, but for somebody who is looking to begin their Databricks journey, right? There are a lot of resources out there, right, for people who want to learn Databricks. But if you were to pick, I don't know, say like the top one or two, that you could say, hey, you know what, you're just starting out, go and take a look at this or go take a look at that. But what would you suggest?
Mm, I think it's hard. I think because I'm quite a hands-on learner, I learn a lot but by doing. I
Yeah.
think then for me it would probably be the Databricks free edition.
Yeah,
I
just
think,
jump straight in.
well, I think
Yeah,
that, I would probably pair it with probably watching like a YouTube video while you're doing it.
yeah,
I think that that's probably how I learn the best because I
yeah,
like somebody explaining something to me and then doing it. So I think sometimes pairing two things together is quite useful. And I think that's where like there's Databricks learning libraries that you can also get access to. So, you know, I think for me, just reading something or just watching a video doesn't quite cut it. So that's why I like hands-on doing stuff.
hmm,
I think that's why you need to do kind of those I'd say do them at the same time because somebody just saying like this is how you build a pipeline and watching a video, I feel like you don't you conceptually start to understand it, but I think it's hard to grasp it unless you actually see it happening in an
yeah,
environment. So
yeah.
I try and do some basic ones just together.
Okay,
And
so
also
Databricks free edition and YouTube videos.
yeah, and also just reach out to people. I think everyone in the community is really nice, so I wouldn't be afraid to like, reach out to people or ask questions if you want. I think learning from people or not necessarily learning like Databricks per se, but learning about the industry or what they can do or, if you don't know anything about data engineering, but might want to know like what's a day in the life like, or is this potentially an industry for me? Talk to somebody. I think that's probably the best way to learn about it because you might find out it's really interesting and you want to know, or you might find out actually this isn't for me. So
Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sydney. That was really informative. I think there are a lot of things that people will learn from this, whether it's people trying to break into the industry or even experts trying to become a champion or someone, looking at best practice of implementation for customers. So thank you for covering, all of those concepts. I think it was really useful.
thanks so much for having me.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay.